Hey guys, I am back with 4 dinner meals that I made for my family and I this week. They were super easy, budget friendly, and taste delicious. Plus, I included one dessert. Night one is loaded nachos on a sheet pan. First, I'm using this 1 pound roll of ground beef. I got this on markdown for $2.98, so it is super budget friendly. I'm just going to fry it up. The total on this meal came to $6.31. I usually try to stay within $5 on a budget meal. This exceeded it by a dollar, which is fine. I'm just adding half a cup of tap water here before I start adding my seasonings. I'm going to use about a quarter of a teaspoon of cumin and an eighth of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And for the rest of the seasonings, I just added the amount I thought was appropriate. You can decide how much you want. I added onion powder, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, chili powder, pepper, and salt. The total prep time here for this meal is about 15 to 20 minutes, and then the remainder of the time is allotted for while it's in the oven. Since my taco meat is cooked all the way through, I just mixed all of those seasonings together and it's ready to go on top of the nachos. And I just placed it to the side. I had these leftover olives from my previous recipe that I wanted to use up. I was just going to place these on top of the nachos before I put the cheese down. I lined my tray with some tin foil and sprayed it with some canola oil, and now I'm just going to layer down my chips. I'm adding my taco seasoning here, and then I'm going to take my fork and just space it all out to make sure that each chip is evenly coated. Now that that's evenly coated, I went ahead and added my chopped olives before I'm laying down my cheese. On a previous recipe, I had shredded this 8-ounce block of cheddar cheese, so I was just using the rest of it, which was about half of the 8-ounce block. I paid 99 cents on markdown for this block of cheese. That price really is helping keep this meal budget at a low. I set my oven temp to 400 and I'm just putting these in for about 12 to 15 minutes. While that's in the oven, I went ahead and diced up my tomato. I forgot to hit record. I'm also going to do lettuce shreds with this half of a lettuce. While my nachos are fresh out of the oven and nice and hot, I'm going to go ahead and add my toppings. I'm just adding my tomato and my lettuce, and I will end up putting 3 scoops of sour cream over the top. This amount of sheet pan nachos should serve at least 4 people. It was 3 for us, with my son coming back for seconds. On night two, I made hamburger steaks with peppers and onions, baked potato, and a side salad. I'm starting with my potatoes since they're going to take the longest. I'm just using bacon grease to coat them before I wrap them in tin foil. I had 2 bigger sized potatoes and 2 smaller sized potatoes. I placed these in the oven for about 45 to 50 minutes, and I ended up pulling out the smaller ones about 15 to 20 minutes before I did the larger ones. I also used a fork to poke holes in them and placed them in a baking dish so that if there was any grease that escaped through the holes, they would catch into the baking dish. And before I placed them in the oven, I made sure to preheat my oven to 425. While that's in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and start with my peppers and onions and my hamburger steaks. I just diced these peppers and onions up and got them into a skillet with some bacon grease and got those going. I'm again using a roll of hamburger meat that I got on markdown for $2.98. I'm just going to put this in a bowl and mix it with my other ingredients. I'm using 1 egg, some pepper, salt, onion powder, garlic powder, and some breadcrumbs, and I'm just going to mix this all together. I do hamburger steaks 2 different ways, this way, and I've also done it on a quick night where I'm in a hurry, where I literally just separate the hamburger meat into 3 or 4 portions and throw it right into the skillet with the peppers and onions. Either way comes out great, but if I do have the extra time, I will add the seasoning and the breadcrumbs. I'm just forming the amount that I want, and kind of similar to a smash burger, I'm just going to smash it once it's into the skillet. My peppers and onions are still cooking down, so I did just set the patties to the side, and I'm going to start on my salad. I have an English cucumber here. I just used about a third of it. I paid 98 cents on sale recently for this English cucumber, and I had some leftover tomatoes that I had bought in a bag for 99 cents. They were pretty well on their last days, so I wanted to get that used up. And I'm also using up the remainder of this head of lettuce. I went ahead and added that to my salad bowl, and now that my peppers and onions are cooked down, I'm going to go ahead and add my steaks. I recently purchased these salad toppers for 54 cents using some coupons, and so I was excited to use this in my salad. I'm just giving it a mix while everything's cooking. I also have this Italian dressing that I wanted to pair with this salad. My two smaller potatoes are done, so I'm just setting them to the side, and this is where I just add the two larger back in for about 15 more minutes. I'm flipping my steaks over because they're done on the one side and giving them a good smash as I turn them over. At this point, I am going to go ahead and doctor up my smaller baked potatoes while the other two are finishing up. I'm just adding some butter and some sour cream here. And as my other two baked potatoes were done, my hamburger steaks were also done. So at this point, I just plated everything up. The total cost for this meal came to $5.58. If you guys are liking this video, please go ahead and give it a like. And if you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. I have been uploading my dinner meals on Sundays. My third night, I had a throw together meal, which ended up being crab toast, cucumber salad, and a mandarin orange. I started by dicing a yellow onion. I didn't have any red onions, which I would prefer with a cucumber salad, so I did go ahead and throw these in some cold water to soak to get some of that harsh onion flavor out. I have this leftover English cucumber from the previous meal, and I'm going to go ahead and dice it up to get started with my salad. Once I have that diced, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my bowl, and I'm going to start with some sour cream. It's going to be about a quarter to a third cup, and I'm using about a tablespoon of this mayo. I used this lemon juice. It ended up being about half a tablespoon that I had left in the bottle, and I'm just going to go ahead and give it a good mix. I do have some dill in my spice cabinet that I've been wanting to use up. I very rarely find fresh herbs on sale, so I normally don't use fresh dill for this cucumber salad. This works just as good. I'm also going to use some garlic powder here and some salt and pepper. I gave that a good mix, and at this point, my onions had been soaking for about 15 to 20 minutes, so I was ready to add those to this salad. I'm just going to rinse out or squeeze out all of the water with these paper towels. I ended up using about half of these onions, otherwise, it was going to be too strong on the onion flavor. Once my salad was completely mixed, I did set it in the fridge for about 20 to 30 minutes while I finished up with the crab toast. I lined a sheet pan with some tinfoil and sprayed it with some canola oil, and I'm using this loaf of pull-apart garlic bread for my toast. I got it on markdown for $1. It wasn't sliced thinly enough, so I did go ahead and slice them more than what they were. I added this olive oil and some garlic powder to season the toast on top. A brush would have came in handy here on a rare occasion. I do wish that I had a brush, but I wouldn't normally use it most times that I'm cooking. So I went ahead and just sprinkled on this amount of olive oil and garlic powder. I did end up smoothing it all out with a spoon. I set that to the side and went ahead and shredded my Colby Jack cheese. I had this 32-ounce block for $2.99 that I paid for. I only ended up using about a third of it. I did find this crab kit for 99 cents marked down, and I thought for sure I would be able to use it. Originally, I was thinking I would add it to some mac and cheese, but when I was trying to do a quick meal on this night, this was the next best idea that I had, was to do some crab toast. So I just added those two servings together and blended this shredded cheese in. I just added it as a toast topping to all of these sectioned off toast. It was pretty thick, so it was hard to get on there, but the consistency was how I wanted it to be. And I went ahead and added the remainder of the shredded cheese to some of them. This meal ended up coming out to $4.10, and it was absolutely amazing. We knocked all of this crab toast out. For a throw together meal, this was absolutely perfect. Night 4 dinner was turkey and noodles with some more of that pull apart French bread. First, I started with my egg noodles. I'm going to use 3 eggs here, and I'm going to beat them together. I will say that before I started on the egg noodles, I had put my turkey in the oven, and I wanted to get that process going. This I had started in the morning. I'm adding some salt, and then I'm going to add about a quarter cup of milk. I mix that all together well, and then I have my all purpose flour. I ended up using 2 cups of flour. You can use a little bit less or a little bit more depending on the consistency of your egg noodles that you like. I will say that this is super easy to make and it doesn't take long at all, and it saves a lot of money rather than buying the noodles. I feel like most people like the Reams noodles, which they are delicious, but they do cost a lot versus making these homemade. I just added my second cup of flour and I'm going to mix this until it's still slightly sticky, but it has enough flour to where I'm going to go ahead and finish putting this together with my hands. The way that I make these egg noodles is partially the way that I was raised to make them from my mom, and also a video that I watched probably like 12 years ago. I can't remember who it was from, but it was about a woman named Aunt Helen and the way she did them. So I've just kind of taken the best from both ways, and this is how I've done it. I just added some flour to my table and I'm just gonna start rolling this out. In the Aunt Helen video that I watched on YouTube, they very specifically said just to remember that flour is your best friend here, to keep adding flour. And it's so true because the flour also comes in handy when you add it to your chicken broth or your turkey broth with your meat, and it helps to thicken it in the very end. You can make these pretty thick if you don't want to roll it all the way out, or if you prefer your noodles thin, you're going to want to roll it out as much as you can. I like them both ways. I decided to just keep rolling to get a little bit more noodles out of this batch. I normally let mine sit out for at least 2 hours. I ended up covering them with some hand towels and they sat out for about 5 hours. My turkey just finished, so I'm going to go ahead and check on my noodles, and they're nice and dry the way that I'd like them. So I just removed the towels and I'm going to start slicing them up into the thickness that I like. I always cut it down the middle. You can also roll it up if you like long noodles. I've done it both ways. It really doesn't matter to me. I just feel like it's a little bit easier when they're shorter when you go to add it to the pot and you're unrolling them. Next, I'm just going to stack all of these together. I like to stack them biggest to smallest with the smallest on top, and that makes my slicing at the very end a lot easier. The exact cost for these noodles that I paid was 49 cents for this whole batch. So as you can see, that is a lot more affordable than paying $8 at Walmart for a frozen bag of Rims. The last thing I'll do with these noodles is I'm just going to fluff them into the remainder of the flour that I have. The more flour, the better, because like I said, that adds as a thickener for your noodles. And I'm just going to get them fluffed and let them sit a little bit longer while I carve my turkey. I was a little bit disappointed. I was only able to get a little over 6 pounds of turkey off of that almost 18-pound turkey. I did get a lot of good turkey broth here that I'm going to use for my noodles. Originally, these were on sale for 84 cents a pound, and then they were on markdown for 44 cents a pound. So that's when I stocked up on two. So I went ahead and added my 1 pound of turkey, and I'm going to get this to a nice little boil. Once it was at a boil, I started adding in my noodles with a little bit of the flour that I had excess of. And I'm just making sure to individually pull them apart if they are somewhat stuck together. At a minimum, they do have a little bit of stickiness on the sides where they were cut. I'm adding about a cup of tap water to my broth to help with it whenever it starts to thicken up to where it's not too thick. This is my mom's recipe. She normally uses parsley, and I don't carry parsley. I usually just buy Italian seasoning, so that's what I use instead. I'm just giving it a good stir and putting on the lid and letting it come to a nice simmer. And I'm setting my timer for 20 minutes. That's about the length of time needed to cook the noodles through. My noodles are cooked through at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and add yellow food coloring. I ended up using about 5 drops to slightly give it the more yellow noodle color. My total cost for this meal came to $3.01. I'm just going to remove it from the heat and cover it and go ahead and get my pull apart garlic bread ready and in the oven. I am again using a loaf of this pull-apart garlic bread that was on markdown for $1 at my local Crest. I am not going to add any extra olive oil or garlic powder to it because I just want to use it more like a French bread that I can put butter on. I have my oven preheated to 400 and I just put the bread in for about 8 minutes total. Once it came out, I just added some butter and plated up my noodles, and it all is done. And this came out fabulous. It was so delicious. I made enough for leftovers and it definitely was ate up by the next day. I made some cinnamon rolls with pecans as my dessert for the week. I have these 2 cans of cinnamon rolls. I paid $1.49 for them. They were on sale and plus I had a coupon. I'm gonna add these pecans. My dad is kind of like a little forager, and he also has a neighbor that has pecan trees, so he stocks up on these, cracks them, and the ones that aren't cracked perfectly, he'll give to me, and so obviously I put them to good use. So once they're in the rolls, I just roll them back up, and I'm gonna add them to my pan once I get them all rolled up. I'm just going to add some canola oil to the bottom so they don't stick. And then I'm going to start placing them in my baking sheet here. And I do end up rearranging them because they're going to expand quite a bit. And I just kind of rearranged them or reconfigured them to accommodate for that. I got this half and half pint on sale for 99 cents here a few days ago. So I'm using 1 cup of that to put in the bottom of my baking dish. And then I'm going to make my sugar mixture, which includes the cinnamon. I'm just using a stick of butter, a cup of brown sugar, and a tablespoon of cinnamon. I'm going to get that mixed up really good, and then I'm just going to top my cinnamon rolls with it. As you can see, this is loaded with a ton of sugar and fat, so I usually don't make these but maybe once or twice a year because I can get very carried away with it. I'm using about a heaping tablespoon for each cinnamon roll on this sugar mixture. I'm just covering this with tinfoil. It's going to go into the oven at 350 for about 40 minutes, and then I will pull it out and uncover it and put it back in for another 5 minutes. Next, I'm just making my icing. I had a leftover container of just this regular icing. My son had used some of it when he had a low blood sugar, and we just kept it in the fridge. It's been almost 4 weeks, so I thought I needed to use it up. I'm also going to use the icing from both of those rolls and mix them together. And I'm just going to go ahead and ice the top of my cinnamon rolls. And that's pretty much all it takes for this recipe. These are to die for. You just truly get carried away if you're not careful. My total for these cinnamon rolls came to $5.16. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching, and I will see you on the next one. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and like and subscribe.